Jyotika, welcome to Excelling Psychology. Recently, I've been posting a lot of videos for AS Psychology. So I've posted videos on the Pozzolo et al. Study, Hassett et al. And Dement and Kleiman. All my videos are focused on how to write answers for the paper. So it's all about exam strategies. If you haven't watched those videos, you can check out the AS playlist on my channel. The videos are available there. It is important when you're practicing for AS to practice both core studies for paper 1 and research methods for paper 2. Maintain a balance between both because to get high grades you need to score well on both papers. So keeping that in mind, today I have for you paper 2 March 2024 paper. We are going to practice that together to stay well versed with our research methods and not focusing too much on core studies, because I've seen students making that mistake. They lose balance and they become one-sided, just learning core studies, and then they're not able to do well on paper 2. So having said that, let's begin practicing with question 1 of March 2024 paper. I will be explaining to you how to answer your questions, not just giving you what the correct answer is. Since I've been teaching for many years now, I have a good idea of what type of mistakes students commonly make on the questions. So I'll keep highlighting those as I'm explaining to you. The first question is very straightforward. What is meant by negative correlation? And it would appear like there's very little scope to make mistake on this answer. Still, there are many students who will score only 1 out of 2 on this answer. Why is that? Because students memorize, like negative correlation, very formulaically they remember. One increases, the other decreases. For positive, one increases, the other increases. But what is that one which is increasing or decreasing? As obvious as it might seem, they don't write that. You won't believe how many answers I've checked in which literally the statement is when one increases, the other increases or decreases. What is that one is not specified. You're going to lose marks definitely if that's how you're going to write, because what you're referring to is not clear at all. If you want to score full 2 marks on this question, you have to specify the word variable or covariable. As obvious as it might seem, it is missing from far too many answers. So how you must write this answer is negative correlation is the relationship between two variables such that when the value of one variable increases, the value of the other variable decreases and vice versa. Okay, so what is key here for scoring is clarity. You can always highlight key points for easy reading for the examiner. Okay, the next question is explain one ethical advantage of a correlational study compared to an experiment using any psychological example. Very important for any paper is to understand command terms. Now that I've explained a lot in other videos, so today I'm not really focusing much on that, otherwise videos become very lengthy. So what explain means and all you can see in another video. Other wording which is important, like when they say psychological example, this is specifically paper 2 terminology. You should be familiar with this also. When they say psychological example, they mean any example. Otherwise, they would say example from core study. Okay, one thing I would like to clarify here. Many students refer to core or key studies as case studies. Please avoid using that term because it creates a lot of confusion for you. Case study is a research method. The studies in your syllabus, such as Dement and Kleiman, Hassett et al., those are core studies. Why you should be familiar with this term? Because a question can be phrased such that give an example from a core study. That is when they are referring to your 12 core studies in the syllabus. When they say psychological example, they mean any general example will do, because not necessary for every type of question there is an example in your course studies. Even if there is, sometimes they are accepting of you using your own imagination and your own reasoning to come up with examples. In fact, that's good for you to think independently. Okay, here what they're asking us is, what would be good if we did a correlation study instead of an experiment? So an immediate advantage that comes to my mind, since they've mentioned ethical advantage, is that wherever there is harm to be caused to anybody by doing manipulation, because manipulation is the key feature of experiment. So to avoid that harm of manipulation, it could be better to do a correlational study. So for example, if I want to study if I cause brain damage to somebody, will it affect, say, their language production skills or the way they reason? Definitely doing an experiment, meaning damaging somebody's brain, would be highly unethical because it causes them physical and psychological harm. So in that case, it would be better to correlate the extent of brain damage with the extent of loss of ability in reasoning or language production. So that comes to mind. That is the main thing when it comes to ethical advantage of correlational studies. Another mistake students could make here is to talk about non-ethical advantages, like giving methodological advantages. For example, correlation studies are done quickly, or they are more realistic, they have more ecological validity. Those are not ethical advantages. So when you're studying your research methods, make sure to segregate ethical and methodological advantages. That's one. And second, please read the question carefully so that you don't make such mistakes. Every word in a question is important to be read if you want to score good marks. This is true across AS and A-level papers. Okay, so now how do we write this? These type of answers we should always break into 2 points or 2 sentences. In the first sentence, we'll explicitly state and explain the ethical advantage. In the second sentence, we'll give an example. So I would write it as one ethical advantage is that the guideline of protection from harm can be upheld by conducting a correlational study instead of an experiment which would cause harm to participants through manipulation. For example, okay, now example is compulsory here because in the question they've mentioned psychological example. So if you don't write the example, you definitely lose 1 mark. Some points I make will seem obvious in the video, but trust me, I have seen students making these mistakes. So for example, studying the relationship between brain damage and loss of reasoning would be unethical in an experiment, as it would involve damaging participants' brains. Okay, let's look at the next question, which is directly from a case study. The memory score in the study by Andrade was calculated using two sources of data. One source was the number of correct responses of names and places given by participants. Describe how the total memory score was calculated. Definitely this is part of data analysis and research methods, but what I'm noticing is in the new syllabus they've started giving some direct questions from course studies which you can even memorize and answer. I guess they are doing this because students were scoring quite poorly on research methods paper. So they have increased some scope to gain marks. Of course, not to gain very high marks. For that, you still need good research methods ability. But generally, just so that students can get a fairly good grade, they have introduced such questions. Still, I would say, remembering so many nitty-gritties of every course study could be difficult. So learning-wise, if you understand the studies through research methods, that's always more helpful than just memorizing things. Anyways, right now, because my focus is not on learning as much as answer writing. So from an answer writing point of view, you have to, when it comes to describing any calculation of scores, first of all, use correct terminology. Students become very vague in these type of questions, like some score had to be subtracted literally that way, or what they wrote wrong had to be subtracted or something. You have to use correct terms like false alarms, which were used in the study. That's one. Second is to give it in terms of a formula. Like you don't literally have to write a formula format of the answer like you write in maths, but it should be given in a way that shows some step-by-step calculation that has been done, or at least a final calculation which was done. So it should be in mathematical terms. So something like subtraction or division or something like that, whatever is applicable, rather than just talking vaguely, this was removed and that was put in, and just use good psychological terminology as well as statistical or mathematical terminology so that things make sense to the examiner. This is very difficult to understand what is written. So I'll write an answer first and then I'll tell you how students become vague about it. So in the Andrade study, we can say the other source. Okay, I'm sorry. The other source was false alarms made by participants. To calculate the total memory score the number of false alarms was subtracted from the number of correct responses made by participants. Okay, so use a term like subtracted or deducted, which makes it easy to understand. I have seen students writing answers like false alarms were, first of all, they won't use the term false alarm. They say something like errors or just scores were reduced or removed, and they don't say from where. So from what? Subtracted, or okay, even if you're saying remove, from what? They were removed from the total score, or just the end the sentences was removed. Always be complete and be clear what you're writing about. It should be written in a way that there's no doubt in the examiner's mind. So something is removed from where, the examiner should not be left thinking about that. Always write as if the other person needs complete clarity, the one who's reading, the examiner, as if they don't know the answer. Write it that way. Okay, the next question is again directly from course studies. Like I said, they've introduced many questions from course studies. In the study by Dement and Kleiman, participants were given instructions before the study about what they should and should not do. Outline one of these instructions. As far as I remember, one instruction is about coming to the laboratory a little before bedtime. The other instruction is not consuming alcohol and caffeine. Okay, so I will take that one, that participants were asked not to consume alcohol or caffeine. Actually, you can take it separately also. Even if you just say alcohol or caffeine for one point, that is correct. This I have nothing to say in terms of common mistakes. So I think students generally answer this question well. It's very direct and it's just for 1 mark. The next question is, explain why the instruction you described was important to validity of the study. Here students make mistake. Again, some of them won't read the question, will not read the keyword validity. So they start describing something ethical, like it was good for health of participants or something, which is pretty random also, and that was not the intention, and it's nothing to do with validity. So you have to always, in terms of validity question, think about control, taking care of extraneous variables, trying to reduce confounding, whatever makes sense to you out of this. Like when you've learned about validity, either you must have learned it in terms of in laboratory experiments they try to control extraneous variables, or you must have learned it in terms of they try to reduce confounding that could come from sources other than the IV. Whichever way you have learned it, bring back that to mind when you're answering this question. So when they are saying that participants could not have alcohol or caffeine, how would that serve as a confounding variable? How would it be an extraneous variable that needs to be controlled? That should be your line of thinking. So if they would have consumed alcohol or caffeine, thinking counterfactually, in that case their sleeping pattern would not have been regular when they were in the laboratory. There would have been disturbances in their REM and NREM stages of sleep, or the pattern or the cycle of these stages. That would have confounded the results, in the sense the researchers would not be able to see how REM stage of sleep plays a role in dreaming. So that is what we need to highlight here. So how we can write it is, we can always write in counterfactual terms with these type of answers, why type of answers. If participants would have consumed alcohol or caffeine, their REM and NREM stages of sleep, you could even just say stages of sleep, would have been disrupted. Then researchers would not be able to clearly see the relationship between REM stage and dreaming, reducing validity of results. Again, when they ask you about something of validity, why it was important to validity, they haven't said as such that validity would reduce or increase because of something. We are phrasing it in counterfactual terms, if then type of thing. So obviously we mean validity would have reduced if that was a possibility. So we need to write reduction in validity. If you're writing it in direct terms, that not having alcohol and caffeine increases validity because of whatever reasoning you're giving in positive terms, then you must mention increases validity. Whenever there is any question about affecting validity, generalizability, impacting or influencing these things, so terms like impacting, affecting, influencing, you have to be very clear and say what you are talking about. Reduction in those strengths or weaknesses, or increase, make sure that is very clear in your answer. Okay, so let's get ahead with this. The next question is on the study by Perry et al. Perry et al. Measured preferred interpersonal distance in a computerized virtual room Preferred interpersonal distance was measured in relation to ball, friend, stranger, authority figure. As you know, there were 4 protagonists in the study. Then they've given the preferred interpersonal distances in the control condition for the high empathy group. And for each of the protagonists, they have given the mean stop distance. That is when the participant stopped the figure on the screen, at what distance. So we have to draw a bar chart from the data on the table on the axis provided, and we must label the axis. Okay, this is a 4 marks question. These type of questions come for 4 marks. Students mainly worry about precision in these type of answers. Like, does my bar have to be very perfect? I won't say it has to be very perfect or precise, because you can see the graph space given also is quite less. But you have to be accurate at least in terms of the heights of the bars. So all should not look equal, or the one which should be tall should not look short. I know again these are obvious mistakes, but don't do these. And try to have at least rough accuracy, if not perfect accuracy in what you're drawing. So you don't literally have to measure every millimeter, but what you're representing should be accurate. Like I said, it should make sense. Okay, first let's see how to label the axis. So let's go step by step. In a bar graph, always categories come on the x-axis. This is x, as you know. Now, the categories in this case, now how to name, that becomes the question. Just go by what is given in the question. Don't make your own wording. So you know, when it comes to the bars, you have to have 1 bar for ball, 1 for friend, because these are the categories. So you're going to have 4 bars, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Don't put your own terms. Use these words only: ball, friend, stranger and authority figure. Same way, what name you should give the x-axis? Preferred interpersonal distances in the control condition for high empathy group. This is the table name. So what you can take it as is, either you can take it as like conditions, because that's what's given, or conditions for the high empathy group, or control conditions for high empathy group, anything like that. As such, you can mention the word protagonist or figure, but I would suggest just take it from the question. Okay, so what we can write here for x-axis is conditions for high empathy group. Okay, in a bar graph, the y-axis will always have the descriptive statistic. In this case, mean preferred interpersonal distance in terms of mean stop distance. That's how they've called it on the table. So we'll just use that wording and we'll write mean stop distance. Okay, now we literally have to draw the x and y axis. In the sense, we have to draw one horizontal line. I prefer taking it at 1 centimeter only. I'm sorry, at half centimeter. It just gives me more room to draw. And we draw one perpendicular axis to that. Just label it properly: y, x and 0. Okay, now you have to draw 4 bars. Just make sure the width of the bars is the same. So just take like 1, 2, 3. Now it looks like 4 won't fit like this. So I'll just narrow down the width of my bars. So you can just do a survey of the chart before actually drawing anything. Okay, so what I feel is I can take that much width, but I'll just have to start somewhere in between. Then I'll be able to fit. And between the bars, I could have a little lesser width. That will help me to fit in all. So what I can do is, I can have a bar at width of half centimeter, and between the bars I can have about 1/4 centimeter distance. Like that is seeming appropriate to me. It doesn't matter, your bars could be narrower in terms of width. The heights are more important than the width. Before I draw anything, but I need a scale on the y-axis. So I can see I have to reach up to 39. So I think about 40 being represented on the y-axis should be good, because as such they have not given the total distance here. From the experiment, we know that maximum distance could be 100, but since they haven't specified it here, we'll just take as 39 being the upper limit. So we have to take y-axis to a point that we can cover up to 39 on it. So what if I take a scale of 5? Again, mentally I can check before actually drawing. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Doesn't look like I'll be able to fit in. So let me take 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay. So 10, 20, 30, 40. If you see in Cambridge, there's no requirement as such, unlike some other boards like AQA, that you have proper a geometric set or something to draw the bar graph, like very proper scales, and they don't even give a proper graph paper like they give in the other boards. So that's why you can make out that there's not much expectation in terms of how accurate you should be in representing the bars. It should just make sense. That is what they are looking out for. Okay, first I have to represent ball, and ball I have to take up to 21. Now when I say you should be sensible, what I mean by that is, if I see the space between 20 and 30, it's difficult for me to precisely draw 21, because I don't have, like I said, a proper bar graph with exactly 10 squares coming from 20 to 30, that okay, I just take it up to 1 square. So just a roughly little above 20, that is also good to represent the bar. So what I'll do is I'll take it somewhere in between, like I said, to keep consistency in the width. And I'll just take it a little above 20. I'm just eyeballing till where I should take it. Just so that it looks like 21 reasonably. That way I'm drawing it. This is optional. On the top you can write also the figure, and below definitely that naming is compulsory. You write ball over there. No type of shading or dotting or anything is required for these type of graphs. Okay, because these are not cluster graphs, they are simple bar graphs. Next is 11 friend. So again what I have to do is the same thing. Just take it a little above 10. Okay, so let me take it at this much distance.